about use case diagrams. And what you all ought to know, but it's more for the technical people, MIS, AIST majors, and any computer science majors we have, that there is a standard unified modeling language out there, and this is a chapter that I just grabbed out of it to talk about the use case diagrams. Okay? To me, it's worth reading for all of us. I said I provided it as a reference because some of it, I would read it. That if you're taking a major that has you take system analysis and design, you ought to understand use case diagrams and their role in development. You ought to understand it, not just, gee, I've got to do what he tells me to do, but it's your major and your interest, but it goes into some detail. This one gets a little bit more into the maybe some of the extensions that can be done to diagrams. Okay, and so got actors. Actors always get a little stick figure, and even if they're systems, okay, oh, here they got this. Usually even the actor with the database server. And so there is a use case. I know I labeled the arcs on mine. I was just starting off to make it clear if you feel like it helps to do that interaction, authorizes and commands maybe over here. But the idea is we're going to replicate databases. All right. Well, that's a use case. Make a copy of the databases. Who's involved? Well, the database administrator kicks it off. What else is involved? The system of databases. That's a use case diagram, and it's almost like it's maybe so easy that if people have, oh, I don't get it, maybe they're overthinking it, right? And yeah, so and all we're going to do is work with simple associations. The customer is associated with order item. There are kind of extensions. This is kind of where I was labeling. They got a whole caption, and so you can have directed use cases. You don't need to see that, but that is something you see when they're trying to use the system and the diagrams to do things more broadly. You can have this idea of we've collected a number of use cases in a system, right? So we have the ATM system, what might be just a subset of another system. Sometimes you can have multiple actors and like that. So that's typically kind of how the use case. We list all the use cases here and all our key actors, and so you can see at a glance who's involved with what. The backup administrator does not replicate databases, for instance, or deploy a web application. Deployment admin doesn't replicate. Okay, I get it. I need more information on what these are. That's where the descriptions come in handy. But it is a picture. And just because you know it, everything has extensions and this, and so you have things like inclusion and exclusion and that we're starting to get a little closer to object-oriented programming, and so all of us should realize that it's there. But man, this isn't anything that's so complicated that just pretty straightforward. That's what a use case diagram looks like. So that's why I provided that reference. Oh, and I'm going to make you use a different use case template than the one the book has because I'm a mean person. Nope, because I want you to realize that there's nothing, and this one is a filled out example. I pulled it from Ronin International a long time ago. These use cases aren't something that just got invented yesterday. So what this includes is something that's more documentation. So I'm expecting you to fix this, right, and take credit for what you've done. If John Nalbone has done your use cases, that's not good. And what you're doing an initial draft. And then this one doesn't do it in a table. A table is a little hard to kind of work with. It's got identifier, description, actors. Okay, the goal. Why do we do it? The book didn't talk about a goal, said that was one of the main things. But why does the initiating actor check grades in D2L? Find out where they stand in the class. That's what they do. Why do they upload an assignment? Why does the instructor do it? Okay, we know about preconditions, postconditions. Notice here they got pretty simple kinds of things. It's another one thing I wanted to do. The textbook shows more fully dressed. That's okay. Any assumptions that you make? Yeah, this one does have a frequency. It's got the basic course, alternate course. Um, don't worry about included or extended, and they have none there too. Okay, and they have issues and decisions. But if you have no issues, just leave it blank. Delete it and just I'd leave the section. Okay, leave all the sections, but leave them all. If it doesn't make any sense, or say none. So leave all the sections. But if you don't have an alternative course that you can think of you want to document, then that's fine. But boy, this is just explaining in words and in some structure what's going on.
Hi, this is Todd Schultz, and I want to take a few minutes just to show you how you can use Microsoft Visio 2013 to develop what are called use case diagrams. And we're concentrating here on the mechanics of the process, and not so much everything about what a use case is. So as mechanically moving it around, the background on how to interpret diagrams or develop them, or what they show, and how to do that best. Well, that's part of what we're going to learn in some of the things that we get into. For now, I just wanted the what is it and how do I make one if I know what it looks like. Sometimes the available shapes, the labeling of a particular technique, like you see a diagram in the book, may differ slightly than what you get, say we're using Visio. In principle, they're all the same, but don't strain at gnats. Oh, they have a green-colored stick figure and mine is black and white. That's not an important thing. The important thing is what are the actions and relationships and the use cases and the actors, in this case, and the relationships. And as always, remember, Visio is a good tool for communicating business process ideas. But boy, open up Visio and stare at the black screen. It won't tell you what your processes are. So Visio comes in and is handy once you have a notion of what it is you want to draw or develop. But let's take a look at a use case. Went out to the internet, found one. It's a common sort of diagram, and what it does is try to provide a high-level perspective on the actors. Okay, let's see here if I get some documentation. I'll use the laser pointer for this. Actors that are involved. Okay, actors in this case, they all happen to be not people, roles, and that's better. There's a role called the customer. We don't say John Smith the customer and Janet Smith the foreperson. We just say there's a role called the customer, a role called the salesperson. But in use case terminology, those and they're often stick figures. Here they're sort of shoulder and head glyphs. That's what I was saying. Don't worry about the exact kind of diagram. Worry about what it's showing. But it's saying, oh gosh, in this system called the inventory system for products, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different actors that involve. Actors don't always have to be people. These happen to be. Sometimes they can be other systems. Maybe they can involve or something physical, maybe a file cabinet, and that. Okay, and so actors, just the people involved and labels of who they are. Now, a use case is going to be backed up by a ton of documentation that details what goes on, but they're saying something like, oh, in this inventory system for a product, there's a use case, an interaction called view availability. And that particular interaction ought to be available to the customer. Can I buy some of these? And to the foreman, how many do we have, right? The foreman, can be involved with order products. Salesperson can be involved with order products, customer. And so the idea is these ovals represent the use cases where a user uses the system. That's why it's called a use case. And then there's usually fleshed out with some step-by-step user scenario. What are the steps that the customer is involved when they view availability? They log into the website. They search for a product, select the product. Up comes the product and how many are on hand. That would be spelled out in a use case scenario. In the diagram, you're almost providing an outline of what are those particular interactions and who gets involved. Okay. Now, whether this is the right use case or something, well, it's not my system. I pulled it a few minutes ago from the internet, but I can tell a lot about it, and it kind of makes sense. The only person who can make an invoice is the salesperson, right? To make one, the customer ends up paying it. Oh, well, we don't have paying the invoice, but that's because we're here stuck in the inventory system. Well, not stuck, but focused on it. Paying for it comes in the For us, it's accounts receivable. If we're the company, when the customer pays for it, and on like that. Okay, so there should be, when you kind of glance at this, you might not have ever done inventory, but there shouldn't be anything here that's so amazing or something that, oh gosh, I didn't know that you could change a product's location. Well, yeah, you can move from the east side to the west side. Forklift driver interacts with that, so does the warehouse worker. Great. We're going to get into a little bit of, okay, how would I represent something like this in Visio? But just realize that these diagrams we're going to look at are just the tip of the iceberg for documenting. It's not the deepest thing, it's the starting point. Sometimes I might argue it's just a little bit of eye candy because there's not a whole lot meat to them, but it is, we learned a fair amount about what's going on in the system here. And if we're developers, we're thinking, okay, we have to probably code some of this in interface and database, so it's not trivial, even though they are fairly simple to understand. As always with Visio, you're going to drag and label the appropriate shapes. Try to make sure those relationships connect, so if you move things around, the other relationship goes with it. Try to lay things so you avoid crossing flows. And as always, we're interested in a functional match. Did I capture the spirit of it? Not necessarily I need a diagram that looks just like something else that I happen to be looking at. So let me get over here in somewhere. I've got Visio going. All right, and so I've kind of come over here to do a new document. A couple of ways. You can always search for the templates first and then go in, but if you get into a blank drawing, that's how I've been doing it, then you can always just search shapes for use case. Okay. There. Kind of clicked on the UML use case to get everything. When I kind of said, wait a minute, I just saw the use case, it's got that, but then I clicked on UML use case, and now I have the things. Use case, actor, subsystem. So I'm not going to do the whole one because we're about mechanics here, not trying to reproduce that one, trying to get an idea of how we do view. Let me try that again. Zoom page width, I think, works a little bit better here when I'm working. Great. So if we were doing something like they had the inventory system product or something. Okay, so the idea is there's this idea of a subsystem. It's a collection of use cases. And one of the things that we had in there, and I can always make this subsystem get a little bigger if I want, kind of typical things, grab it, stretch it, product availability or something. So Visio kind of has, with these templates, has in mind the kinds of things that you're going to do. There are a couple of actors involved. I'm not worried that it's a green head and shoulders, and it's not quite just a stick figure, but I understand what's going on. We had one person, was it the foreman? One person. And we had another actor involved, was the customer. So mechanics, if you know what your picture looks like, not too hard. And you can have, and we'll get into a little bit in system analysis and design class, a little bit about what the difference between a mere association is, a dependency, a generalization, include and extend. It's kind of the idea that you might have product availability is or could be generalized into something that's an inquiry type of thing. That, there's product availability, there's resource availability. Anyway, this isn't the time to talk about those. So far, all we really have is associations. So you drag this association on there, hook it, when it turns green. This is what I say about make sure it's connected. So if I move it around to make things better, it goes with the thing. Green means it's connected. And so foreman is associated with this product availability use case. So as it turns out, in that case, I dropped it when I had the green on the, while I had it in hand, and it put the thing here, and then when we talked about nice diagram, there it is. They're both associated with product availability. All right. Sometimes I've seen these. I think you can label them. Online lookup or just lookup. But usually you don't name these associations, but they can get named if you have something. And so if you see a use case where they do it, don't say, oh, that's illegal. My instructor said, don't put anything there. They might be there. But usually they're unlabeled. It's pretty clear from this what's going on. And there's really not much more to it in terms of just the sheer mechanics of making a use case. Sometimes we have several pages of them, so you can make a new tab with more use cases, but that's the fundamentals. Drawing a use case with Visio. Pretty basic, so I think I will let you go, and until next time, signing off. Bye-bye.